David Sherjan. Welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. As I told you in the brief intro, I don't remember where it was that I heard about you, like I do with almost 9 out of every 10 guests that I have on my show, it seems, for some reason. But you were definitely worthy enough to be on my show, and looking at your videos on your channel, definitely someone I want to have on to talk about things. And see, you were with Magenta Pixie on some show. I interviewed her. She's a fascinating lady. I love listening to her. And but now it's your chance to have some glory. So why don't you tell us your life story from a primary source perspective? And I'm also interested to know why above duality is the two-word phrase of choice that you've used to title your occupation of choice regarding waking people up and all. So you've got the floor. I will shut up and put myself on mute.
Thanks, Andrew. Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to say anything that may impact people positively listening back to this. But yeah, I'll just maybe share a little bit about my background and where I come from. And you and I, Andrew, I think are probably connected through the web and the cosmic web, both intertwined, of course, led by the cosmic web. But yeah, I do have a YouTube platform, and which is probably the biggest outlet for our message right now, my message. And then I do have a website, aboveduality.com, which is I need to continually update more. But anyway, either way, I come from really quite a businessy, entrepreneurial background, I suppose, if you want to sort of label it like that. And I started off my life here really being thrust into the sports lifestyle from my father. He was British military. He was at 8th Battalion Paratroopers, British Army. And then he was he was called into MI6, British intelligence. And then my grandfather was in World War II in infantry at Dunkirk and all the way through that. And then my great-granddad on my father's side was actually a very high-ranking general in the Afghan army. And our sort of lineage goes back through the Middle East, even though I don't sound Middle Eastern right now, as you can probably tell. I am mostly British and 1/8 Afghani. Anyway, right from an early age, I was really raised entrepreneurially from a mindset perspective. And that was both from being around my father, who was very entrepreneurial, and sort of catching the tail end of his sports career, which in my view that I remember, he could have taken a number of sports and played them professionally, but never chose to. And in any case, he passed off a lot of those teachings to me, and I learned some great entrepreneurial and life disciplines through sport, through him. And my mother on the other side of that, as he took me to the field, was the great spiritual guiding divinity that was to be a fantastic channel through my spiritual awakening, and has really come back into the picture, I think, the last sort of 5 years, really quite wonderfully, as we lead into my awakening and starting above duality. Now, my career is, I'll sort of keep it as brief as I can. I started my first company when I was in my 20s. And by my early 30s, I was handing that off and getting into another business. And that second business was really a bit of a failure. I ended up starting all over again once that broke apart in 2011/12 in moving from England to Canada. And very sort of challenging time in my life with lots of things going on, and sort of experiencing deaths of great friends and uprooting myself to move. It was very challenging, and in the process breaking up a company which I never really wanted to be a business. So a big sort of mix of things that led me to really where I am today, I think, as many of us look back and can say the same thing in all of our lives. But so 2011, 2012, I made the plan to really hit it out of the park, or want to hit it out of the park with finances, and decided to go to Hollywood. So my plan was to, as I was sort of picking myself up again financially, to produce and direct. So I'd written a number of scripts 3 or 4 years later, and including a season and a pilot on a mockumentary show, which I will make one day, but it's taken a bit of a diversion now. And I was ready to launch that, ready to go to Hollywood, ready to go to LA, and then down to across to Vancouver and then to LA. That was my plan with the sort of the film route and the connections that I'd made. And thankfully, no one I know about Hollywood now. I dodged a bullet because a couple of couples within 8 months of really me executing on this plan convinced me to stay and build out a completely separate company, an e-commerce company, which we've just sort of finished rounding off, and I've just really handed off now. So that was that. But 2017, probably the beginning of 2018, I went through several shifts in consciousness in a major way. And at the time, I was running this e-commerce company, plus another recruitment company, which was really my roots. And I felt this frequency mismatch, as many people do and have done, and some have experienced it much earlier. I know that I've interviewed a number of people on Above Duality's YouTube platform that have started very early with their spiritual awakening, but it's quite late for me. The real awakening part and the calling to the front line as where I'm at now. And it was sort of following the death of my first wife, and that was to trigger off some wonderful events that led me to Above Duality. But it was one of those days where, and I've spoken about this recently, that I just had sort of a walk into the boardroom moment. Now, what I mean by that is I didn't physically walk into a boardroom and do this, because I've set this particular company up virtually, the recruitment company. I just felt like the duality, the materialization and the goals that I had around material things really served me no more. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I still, like nice things and what have you. I don't think it's bad to want them, but to be wanted by them and to be controlled by the material is a dangerous path. And so many examples of that. I've definitely been one. So 2018, I just knew that I had to join the Great Awakening front line, which I had no idea what that was going to look like. And I was led by spirit, led by guides, to create the Above Duality platform, which really launched early 2019 after I sort of finished wrapping up some of these companies, or at least putting them in a place where they could be led without me. And it was launched. So it started off as a blog, and now it's sort of quite a fast growing vlog and interview show and radio show on YouTube. And my mission right now is I'm pivoting, in the process of pivoting right now, but my goal is to contribute however I can to the wisdoms and the teachings that I've learned from wonderful masters, whether they're from my own guides or great teachings of the masters of the Far East, which I'm really into right now with some mystery schools that I'm doing, and shared this ancient but more than ever relevant knowledge with as many people as I can, whoever wants to listen, to help them raise their frequency and vibration and physical skills to then also help wake other people up as we sort of catalytically, if that can be a word, help each other and move towards higher densities here, which is, well, it's already created the upper densities, but to bring the upper density modalities down into the third densities, dissension, and then take it together back up to the fifth density, the fifth dimension and beyond, in ascension, which is where we're all going. So that's a sort of a roundabout story of me, Andrew. There's a lot more depth to that, as you can imagine, but just to give your listeners a little bit of a background.
Yeah, thank you very much. And now I can't resist and help but asking you, well, I'm assuming when you say above duality, you are suggesting that we kind of need to move above duality to the point where and realize that we're all one. Now, that's a good thing, but also can be a little problematic, it seems. And there's no person I can give as a better example of this than Lily Earthling Kosalova, who made a video. She was interviewed on my show, but she did make one video that I've put out in a few places of people who like to use like the yin yang symbol and the Merkaba, and I asked them, you sure you want to focus on these symbols? Look at this video by Lily Earthling, and she just suggested the Merkaba and the yin yang are symbols we shouldn't really put in our lives because they have a duality base, which keeps us from unity consciousness. However, Lily seems to have a bad reputation for attacking people a lot, and it seems like trying to be of a unity consciousness has put her also in a polarity consciousness, whereby she seems like to enjoy being mad, which isn't such a bad thing. I like being mad too, but not at people. I like Alex Jones of InfoWars style of like being mad, you're evil and you deserve to be exposed, that kind of thing. And but and it's kind of caused her to lose some audience members. I don't have a problem with letting her post on my Facebook page for this channel, but I've seen some people respond to her comments saying, "Why do you have to attack people all the time? It's ridiculous." And I think maybe by saying we should move above duality, yeah, it's a good and bad thing for the reasons I just explained. So
Mm.
I babbled long enough. Do you have any comments on this?
Yeah, no, not at all. I love what you're saying. Yeah, you know, when someone is into this mode of um, attacking and defense from the root of fear, it really is a revelation. And not to point the finger at them and say we're any better or any worse than anybody, but it's just a revelation of where they're at with their connection to source and the divine through flow of that. And if people are very, aggressive and angry and things like that, it's an ignorance of God. And I've been there, you've been there, Andrew, I'm sure, and we'll continue to go there in duality. That's the sort of one of the poles, the other sides of the love and the God and the divinity that is within us all, which is the natural state of the soul, as the great master Serapis Bey talks about in Being Genius. But yeah, above duality is really, it's not that the beneath duality is bad or duality is bad at all. We need that, and by the way, if you've chosen that and you're in duality right now, you've passed the test of coming down here to experience the soul lessons you have and assist Gaia in this great ascension. So feel privileged, and I have to consistently remind myself of this. But above duality is to prepare people for frequencies and living in frequencies that are above duality, so in higher resonance, in higher vibration than the duality vibrations, and more so the sort of the negative states of duality, as it were, because both are needed. And to recognize this fifth density that we're going into, we've chosen to experience, many of us in the missions that we're on. Some haven't, by the way, which is, I'm sure you've experienced people that just are unwilling or not ready, or have chosen to not wake up contractually. And we must love them as much as we can, the same as we love our soul family brothers and sisters, as ultimately we are all soul family in some degree. So yeah, it's really preparing people for those frequencies that are in the higher densities. And in order to do that, like I said, we must take the duality, the third density, and upper third and the beginning of fourth modalities into action and also inaction as well, letting go, but into action state, so we can develop these skill sets of meditation, quiet, connection to source, and take the physical up to the non-physical. And we've chosen to do that. And I have to remind myself of that, because, and some people listening to this will probably agree, and some people won't. That's okay. But I go through large chunks of my day, my week, my month, where I'm so fed up with the third density and so bored of duality. And in fact, I actually feel like it's kind of a bit of a fog. I feel like it's a bit of an old memory, the duality, in as much as I just feel like I'm moving much closer to sort of the neutrality and the bliss states of the upper modalities, the upper densities. And many of you feel that too, I know. But we still have missions to play here, and everyone has a different mission. Some have the same mission, to contradict that. But people who are, choosing to attack and things like that, that's just part of it's part of their soul journey to release energetically what they've been storing in their physical body and their etheric body here, in order to learn the lessons they need to do to move forward. And it may well be they've chosen to not move through in this first wave of ascension, which I think will come in waves. So that's just a roundabout way of answering why above duality, Andrew.
Thank you very much. Now I've listed the videos here on your channel from most popular to least popular, and I guess I'll go down the line because, well, the ones that are the most popular, not just because they've been on there the longest, but also probably because they have very important subjects. And the number one most popular one, which was uploaded a month ago, was a secret space program with special guest Carrie Cassidy. Yeah, I interviewed her too, watched all her videos. She's woken up a lot of people, bless her indeed. And well, I guess I might, if you would know a thing or two about the secret space program, I guess I'll give you the chance now to talk about anything that you know and anything you feel is worth talking about. So you got the
Right.
floor on this.
You know, it's so important, and it's so important to understand if it's your intention to really understand why we're here. And the reason why I say that's a pretty bold statement. This is sort of my journey with it. Is in order to understand why we're here, you've got to understand who you are and what you are and why you are. You know, in the soul capacity and the very high, amazing resonance of consciousness that you are powering this human form, right? You're not, as many of your listeners will know, you're not human. You're a soul and high consciousness living the human experience for various reasons, like I just went into briefly. And so if you want to understand this stuff, especially here on Earth, then you have to understand that if you go into the secret space program, you will start to unlock little secrets of our galactic history that has been hidden from humanity, modern humanity, for the last 100 years. Very deliberately. In fact, unfortunately, this is the DF, the Dark Forces' plan has succinctly failed, although they will continue to fight here towards the November elections. But the secret space program research will lead you into all kinds of things quantum, because a lot of these galactic cousins of ours, these ET races that are here at this time and have been here for many centuries in different iterations, you'll be able to understand that some of this technology that we have and some of the technology that we are, by the way, the greatest red pill that we're heading into is the revelation of our genius, of actually that the, hashtag full disclosure and release the technology is really releasing us, right? Releasing our genius and our brilliance to its full capacity. That's the biggest red pill that a lot of people are going to miss, but that's okay. So the secret space program is in different iterations really linked to our cosmic roots and our galactic roots, which will lead you to who we are if you do a lot of due diligence on that. But in terms of the sort of the physical, the duality side of it, there's a very interesting history there that I found going to the Anunnaki and all the way back, way beyond that, from beyond the towns of Egypt and through Atlantis and even before that, is that the Earth is inhabited by strong galactic beings, and we're one iteration of that that's now ascending. And we have, as it relates to duality again, the governments that have come to power, especially the last 100 years, have decided to shield humanity from a lot of these truths, the ET presence, the technologies that we have in USAPs and black programs, to form control in an ultimate goal to, some people may not like this, but one of the main goals of the DF, of this control group, is to create a Borg-like civilization. If you watch Star Trek, any really iteration of that, apart from the very early ones, you'll remember the Borg race and the ships and the story behind that. That's really to a large degree what the control group, what the Dark Forces' plan was to plug humanity into that hive mind. And some people may unfortunately be pulled into that, with some of the polarities and the non-waking up of some, and maybe they've chosen to do that as well. So the secret space program is so important to understand all of this stuff. And I can say now more than ever, as we get past this pandemic, to the secret space program disclosure, which, by the way, folks, as I've been told, is right behind this pandemic. And if you look at, and Andrew, I'm sure you'll know this, the Space Force is really the foundation to launch in the disclosure of the secret space program. That's just obvious for people who have researched this stuff. So it's to get ahead of the narrative, get ahead of what's coming, some big truths, which I'm sure some are going to shock even you and I, Andrew, having studied this for many years. That's coming. And so it's really important to know about.
Yes, it is. Digressing for just a moment here, you mentioned the control system is going to try to impose this on us until the November elections. But well, you're not actually suggesting that this coronavirus thing is going to force us to stay in lockdown, and any governors that try to open the states up, like apparently the Arizona governor, who according to M and Miss M on Joseph P. Anthony's YouTube channel made a video saying the Arizona governor, he has some dirt on him that they threatened to blackmail him if he opened the state up. I don't know if they have the same thing on Governor Tom Wolf in Pennsylvania from my neck of the woods, but I mean, everybody's got a few skeletons in their closet. I can't imagine they couldn't do it with the other states. Maybe for some reason they perceived Arizona as a big threat. Makes sense considering that of all the vortexes and points out there that they don't want
Yeah.
freedom interacting with. But the idea that it would go on till November, you got to be kidding me. I mean, where are you making that assertion that we're gonna in some way have to deal with this? I mean, people are saying the coronavirus, if assuming David Icke is wrong when he says it's just genetic material they're testing for, and there really is a virus. Um, where in the world could they make the claim that we have to keep people in all summer and all fall long for that matter? Because I thought the research says that this virus, it has an airborne lifespan. Its airborne lifespan is greatly hindered if the temperature rises a lot. So
Right.
what's the
Yeah.
deal there?
Yeah. Great question. And, who knows how this is going to play out to November and beyond. But from what I have seen, from what I'm experiencing up here in Canada, and from some of my American contacts who are some in elite operations and some just people like myself on the ground, on the front line of the Great Awakening, in a different way. I do think that what you're going to see now, I'm going to throw something else into the mix after this, which is a very interesting seed that's growing in me right now from something that someone said to me. And he's on an elite task force in border control. I won't go any further than that. But anyway, so I think what you're going to see, I really think what you're going to see is the battle right now spilling out onto the streets, quote unquote, a little bit. We've already got this right now, kind of. Except if you're really asleep and this is all news to you, then this is going to be difficult to conceptualize, and that's okay. But you're going to see a battle between deep state-owned governors of states and the other side, the alliance owned and run states. Now, I can't give you enough of an overview of that from the American point of view because I don't know enough about who runs what. But I can tell you, you're going to see this play by play. You're going to see states opening up, and with some sort of draconian measures that people will rebel against, like the mask wearing and nonsense like that, which is completely ineffective. And then you're going to see the deep state controlled or the dark forces controlled governors of states continue to do whatever they can to lock people down and to keep them isolated, to do the social distancing thing, and all of this stuff. Now, I just think you're going to see that back and forth a little bit. So some states will open with complete freedom, sort of the Swedens and the Switzerlands and stuff like that, or you're going to see the middle ground of that, so semi-open with restrictions, and then you're going to see sort of the third tier of that, the Orwellian lockdown continues. I mean, it's not only is it unconstitutional, it's fairly illegal from a number of standpoints, as I have been told. But as we know, and as John D'Souza was talking about on Edge of Wonder yesterday, I highly encourage people to go and check out that show. It's very, very good. And we're hoping to get John on the show soon. He's very, very good. Anyway, ex-FBI, and he's got a great story. But he was talking about this law.
Hold on just a minute. Yeah. I since you mentioned that, sorry to interrupt you, but I actually decided not to watch that because I've listened to a lot of John's work and I figured it would be preaching to the choir. But I'm very interested. If he actually did come out with some new things, by all means, tell that stuff.
Yeah, he had. I'm not going to ruin the show, so go and watch it. But he had 2 or 3 bombs, and I've been the same way, Andrew. So I totally get what you just said.
Well, please give these bombs out. My show wants to get out current event stuff too, so it's okay to give it out on this show. And I'm interested in hearing only because I decided I know John's work, so this will probably be preaching to the choir. So
sure.
Don't be
I'll tell you
ashamed.
what. I'll give you one because it's a long show, but I'll give you one for sure. And that was he was talking about this law that stems from medieval times. Now I'm going to forget the name of the law. Anyway, it was linked to a Q drop recently that was actually a link to a page for the constitutional description of it. And the law is basically, in layman terms, that certain aristocracy or certain levels of the elite, or certain bloodlines, however you want to term that, are exempt from the majority of law. It's kind of hard to believe that, but it's true. And if you look at, I won't say names because I don't want to get the show banned for you, but the HCs, the renegades of this world, etc. People like that it's unbelievable knowing what we know about them, that they're not in prison, right? And there are narratives that some of them actually they're in processing right now. They're actually, they're in the process of, indictments have been unsealed. And John was talking about this yesterday as well. And that particular individuals have been given and granted permission to carry on, but they are in processing for trial. Anyway, but this law that's in place, um, essentially, if you're an elite in a certain position or a certain bloodline, I can't give you all the parameters of it because I can't remember, and I've not studied it because it was yesterday. But it basically gives people powers to not, to be above the law, and we already know that on the ground, right? But this particular thing, I think you will still, that will tie into what I just said about the governors exercising some of these deep state control powers, these draconian powers, to continue to be above the law. Now, I know behind the scenes there's lots of stuff going on with the Attorney General, and I'm just talking about the states here, with Trump and the alliance and this wonderful team. You don't have to like Trump; it's kind of irrelevant. You just got to know what they're doing. But so I think you'll see that, Andrew. I think you'll see it play out like that. They're going to try all kinds, and this is a lot. Make no mistake about it. This is one of the last throws of the dice by them. Doesn't mean they're not defeated. They're defeated, although we are heading to a crystallized ascension result in terms of humanity. There are different ways this can play out, and that largely is down to us here on the ground. So, I'm not going to encourage people to take up firearms and take to the streets, but I am saying that you should really, really consider whether you're going to abide by some of these draconian laws and violations of freedom, and in many cases violations of laws, and just take it on the chin and say, well, I'm just going to listen to what the governor says and I'm going to continue to keep my business closed, etc. As this what's his name, Anderson, this ex-special forces cop who came out, and unfortunately he's been on suspension now, I think, with a view to being fired, or he has been fired. He came out with a video a few days ago. It's gone viral.
I just watched that. As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
Laura Eisenhower did a video to say that too, and she said yes, he was fired. And dude, okay,
Right.
he basically said everything that he possibly could say to show the police do not have authority to do what they're doing. There's laws that make that clear, and I don't care if you fire me because and they fire him anyway. Can you get any more pathetic than that? And now he's got a GoFundMe page, and he's actually raised a fortune, and it kind of makes me wonder, how is it that this officer who decided I'm not going to take it anymore with my coworkers' corruption. I'm going to make a video and I'm going to post it. And now that he gets a fortune for making a GoFundMe page, how is it that he gets a fortune out of that? But people like Eddie Craig and Randy Kelton of Rule of Law Radio, who've been talking about this for years, are like bare bones rationing their meals because they're barely making any money off the donation supported videos that they're doing. It drives me crazy.
Yeah,
So
I hear you. I don't have an answer for that spiritually, but I do know that we're here on our own path, learning our lessons for the reasons that we've chosen to do so. And I know you have, Andrew. I've experienced that in different iterations of my life. So all we can do is move forward with love and light and try and support each other the best we can. So no, I hear you. I do hear your heart. Anyway, yeah, he was sort of talking about this, and this is it right now, guys. This is it. Humanity, listen. You're either going to take these measures, or you're going to, and ideally non-violently and non-combatively. That's not what I'm really a pacifist. I don't go for the violence thing unless my life is threatened and I have to defend myself. But you're either going to take these draconian laws or you're not. It's really that simple. And this is a beautiful time in humanity right now, because it's the sort of not quite the tipping point, but one of the crossroads for the divine to say, well, guys, what are you going to do? Yeah, the deep state's here and they're going to try and continue to control you. What are you going to do? We have to answer that call with love at the core, with love and light and divinity at the core, but at the same time with the strength to reject and not consent to these measures, should you choose to do so. And I think each and every one of us has to decide, every man, woman, and child has to decide what's going to be right for us and our family, and only you can make that choice. So, but I do think it will continue to play out this way. And just to expect some more of that, I think, is probably going to be the way it will play.
well, thank you for saying how you expect it to be. Good job not putting any dates out there. That's gonna, like, a lot of people have egg in their face when they give dates. But I do see you have a couple videos here mentioning the new currency thing, and the best case scenario, it seems that people are saying when we get out of this, is that when we do get out of this, one thing that you should see on the other side of this is that no more slaves to central banks, no more corruption on Wall Street, and they even say, yes, we're supposed to eventually have that Nasara Jassara RV-based global currency reset to a gold-backed currency where there's money that has value and no more usury, no more loaning money that doesn't exist and charging interest on it, and no more rigging and corruption on Wall Street to manipulate the system. It seems like very big wishful thinking to a lot of people, and even David Icke, who he's well, I've criticized him recently because he always seems to focus on the negative, even though he said the positive can only increase over time. I mean, he's downplayed Q and also this currency reset thing because apparently he doesn't want people to think like that because maybe he's afraid of people becoming couch potatoes and thinking I don't have to do anything because people are going to come and save me. So maybe he believes that things are real, but he doesn't want to push it. Now I'm going to ask the question: is it real? And if it is real, I've been hearing the excuse over and over. The reason the currency reset hasn't happened is because the bankers have been fighting to the death to make sure humanity doesn't get the reset. And well, that's the excuse they always give. But I ask the question: is that a reasonable excuse, or are you just not trying hard enough to overpower the bankers? And right now, the word on the street is they're going to give the bankers going to throw the kitchen sink at them, just like they're throwing the kitchen sink at us to put a stop to this so we can have the reset. So if you want to give any dates and a timeline on when you expect that reset to be, well, I'm brave enough to do that, go ahead, but there's your chance.
I won't go near the pinpoints, Andrew, for obvious reasons, and you know why. But here's what I think. I mean, the base point here is humanity is going to higher dimensions, higher densities, and higher levels of consciousness. Now, where are we going? We're going to an Earth without money. And that's a really bold statement. And I've believed that actually ever since I was about 9 years old. I've always had these feelings, and we're getting close to the physical reality, within the next 20 years, probably less than that actually. And what I mean by that is when you develop this divine spark, this Christ within us all, this high level of consciousness, this Christ consciousness, you move beyond the need to have a primary exchange system, and many ET civilizations have done. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to, and that you can't have a working, functioning society with a currency. That's okay if you want to do that, but it will limit your expansion of consciousness to a large degree. So anyway, I just want to plant that there. There's more to that ball of string, and I'm just going to leave it there for a second. But as it relates to the physical, the material, the duality, the 3D, yeah, I think from what I know, and I was told with the European banking connections that I had and have, I was told early last year, that when Deutsche fell, that would be the sort of the beginning of the revelation that the next collapse was going to come. And it's a lot more intricate than that. And then Deutsche nearly got bought out by the Chinese, and I think they are in full receivership now, as far as I know. Now that I might be wrong about that, but that's what I heard a couple of months ago. Anyway, and many of these banks are on this teeter-totter, this cliff. And every country is essentially bankrupt if you look at the balance sheet. Anyway, so what's the crux is that the system is failed, has failed, was always going to fail, and I do believe that, and David Wilcock was alluding to some of this with the asset-backed system, the gold-backed system, the metal-backed system. That deal's already been done, and there's even talk of this quantum system, this quantum financial system, being a large part of that. Now, how do those tie together, and what does it mean for us on the ground? Well, I think personally, this is just my intuition. I don't have physical evidence of this, so take it as you will. The Nasara Jasara situation, I do believe something like that will happen, and I don't think it will play out like it's been listed, but I do believe that there will be, in some part, a Jubilee type scenario where you have this windfall of financial gain to virtually every man, woman, and child who's of eligible age. Of course, I say child, but every family or single who lives on planet Earth, from the incredible volume and quantity of money that this deep state has stolen from people in the tax system, has stolen from the illegal side of dealings with what they do, with arms trades and things like that, with the funding of both sides of wars, with the creation of wars, etc., all the way through to the secret space program, technology and money that's been funneled underground and up into space. and it's in the hundreds and hundreds of trillions of dollars, I think was the last estimate from someone I was talking to the other day. That's probably somewhere near accurate. So I don't think anyone has a specific number on it, but I think it probably is hundreds and hundreds of trillions. So as that translates down to us here on the ground, I think you will see a portion of that, which even if it's just a portion, is a ton of money. You know, it's life-changing money down to people, and I think that will come down to everyday people. You're already seeing pocket debt forgiveness, so that, you know, in terms of the NESARA and GESARA, one of those line items was that in some bearing, and you're seeing that right now. You've got people's student loans and loans being wiped out, or large chunks being wiped out. So I think it's going to drip in like this, and it's already started. I don't think it will sort of come into one big, you know, sack of cartoon money on the table kind of thing. It won't come as an MOAB. It will be layered in because there are people who are not ready for this, as they have done with everything, as will be done with the secret space program to the people who are awakes, sort of dismayed because we want it to drop, right? We want the sack of goodies to drop under the tree, but it's just not going to happen like that. Now there might be bigger drops as we go along here. We're actually seeing that now. So I think there will be that NESARA GESARA type scenario. I don't have any specific information from connections of how that will look, and I don't think anybody really does. At least they're not allowed to share it. So I see nothing but positive financial gain in the current monetary system, or the current primary exchange system on Earth, to everyone, and I do believe that.
Yeah, and I'm going to have someone on my show very soon who did a presentation that where he talked about how gold standard return is inevitable, and very significant thing he said there was that the reason people in my generation, Generation Y, and also Generation X, and the parents of the people in Generation Y and Generation X, the reason a lot of us can't make sense of moving to a gold standard is because we've basically spent our whole lives under the thumb of the Nixon shock, where in 1971 Nixon took off the dollar's convertibility to gold, and so nobody can envision what a gold standard is really like, because we haven't experienced it. But I'm going to try to hopefully solve that problem and get people to change their minds, and maybe the collective consciousness will, after seeing that interview, will push the gold standard in a little faster. Now, from a spiritual perspective, there's one little issue on this in regards to how to plan for this. I have thought about this myself, but I've since realized it's a bad idea, and I'll explain why briefly. The idea that I thought was, if you hypothetically know when the GESARA NESARA RV is going to happen, at that moment when you find out it's going to happen, is it a good idea to take out as many loans as possible out of the banks, max your credit cards, buying as much gold and silver as possible, and then when the debt jubilee happens, you'll get all that debt wiped off, and you get to keep all the gold and silver because, well, the debt jubilee happened. And well, I've come to the realization that that's not a good idea, because it can be basically explained in this manner. Credit cards are God's way of seeing how good you can manage your karma. When you pay off your credit card debt, you are resolving karma. I figured that out after I got a trust fund donation from my family for some property on a farm we had, my family had in the New England area. Part of that included giving me a check for several $1,000s. I used that to pay off my credit card bills. And the moment I got that, I got the biggest headache ever. And then a few synchronicities happened that suggested that headaches can be a sign of karma resolution. And I was like, well, I guess that explains why I got the headache. So if you want to be stupid and max your credit cards out to buy as much gold and silver before the GESARA thing happens, and then think that when your debt gets wiped off and you get to keep all the gold, that's a good thing. Well, no, it's not a good thing. All the karma that you generated with that phony debt money, it's going to come back to bite you in a when you reap what you sow perspective. So don't do that. It's good to keep paying off your credit card bills as much as you can until the debt jubilee happens. And I'm sure that's you said it is happening with the student loans. You would have to think eventually it's going to apply to all debts which are unpayable, because that's how fractional reserve banking works.
Yeah,
but
totally.
Yes, totally. So moving on to some of the other things that you've
I just want to make a quick comment there, Andrew. Sorry to cut you off. I totally agree with that. I just want to say something here, and this is I just am called to say it, so I will. And it's really a couple of things. When you master a playing of the octave of true love, true divinity, you'll be invited in some capacity to play in the great cosmic orchestra, right? And what I mean by that is exactly what you were talking about. It is really linked to your energetic goals, your energetic visions. What is your vision for your life? Is it one to live in the bounds of cosmic law, of cosmic divinity, and that path, or is it to maybe stay more in the material? And either which one you choose is right for you, right? It's there's no right or wrong other than what you deem it to be, linked to the result that you want to some degree. Now there is some right and wrong, and that can be argued. That's probably a conversation for another time. But we are heading to a place on Earth, and I can't fully understand it. None of us can, where sensations the sensations that we go through will transcend the intellect. Okay. Now, what I mean by that is we are heading to a place energetically where our rational minds really won't play anywhere near a part as they do right now in duality. And it's very difficult to understand that from a 3D rationalization perspective. But I do think, I'm always a big picture guy. I look at, okay, what do I want to accomplish? What's my main goal? And that's to get society and help do whatever I can do to help society get to a place where Christ consciousness and the divinity of the divine spark within leads everything, so that money is not needed on the planet. That's my go-to. That's my goal. But if your goal is not there, that's totally fine. So in terms of the again, the day-to-day stuff about what you're talking about, it's really linked to that end goal, right? It's linked to what you want to accomplish in that realm. And I think that as a side note, as we know, this is cliche, but it's true, and I've experienced it, and I've also got it wrong, is the journey is the destination, right? And if people are waiting for someone to come and save them, they're waiting for Nasara, you're missing the trick of why you came here, in my opinion. And that is to experience the love of every moment. Now, it's okay to have goals and to work towards them, but to be as present as we can, as your point of power lies in the present moment. And so if people are holding out for things, for Q to help them or for the Alliance to help them, we salute what they're doing. But if it's taking you away from developing your own empowerment, you're going to wind up where you're at right now in another place. I guarantee it, as I have,
Yes, indeed. And seeing what's going to hold up in the future regarding how we mix our consciousness with artificial intelligence. That's one of the videos that you have here on your channel, Cosmic Consciousness versus AI. David Icke recently uploaded a video talking about how 2030 expects like the singularity of sorts to happen. And that kind of resonates with the Terminator movies, 2029 being the year that the Terminator came back to 1984 to murder Sarah Connor. Of course, those movies are on a negative timeline in 2029, 2030. David Icke, I'm sure, is on a more positive timeline. And one of the popular quotes from the recent new Star Wars movie, Episode 9, featuring the return of Emperor Palpatine, one of the memorable quotes from that movie was, "Never underestimate the power of a droid," which suggests,
Yep.
okay, we shouldn't say, let's move away from technology and go more to nature. No, let's try to figure out a way to get technology and nature to work with each other. I don't know if you
Yeah.
ever saw the third Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie from, I think it was 1993, but they went back in time to Japan, to like Japan 1603, feudal Japan time. And when they were going to go back to the future, back to their own time, in New York in the sewer where the Ninja Turtles live, Michelangelo actually didn't want to go back. He said, "I want to stay here in feudal Japan. I love it here so much," and very nature-like and all. And Donatello, who is the genius of the group, like the machine guy, he was like, "Do you think I could live here without a single microchip? I want to go back to my time." Well, that's good microchips he's talking about, not the kind that they want to implant us with. But this idea of consciousness versus AI, and I also ask the question: is there such a thing as good AI? I mean, some say AI has no karma, and there's no way a AI would want to like masquerade as an ET entity to wake humanity up. As I've even raised the question, is what might be happening with Gosha of Cosmic Agency. I hope it's a real entity she's channeling, but I just asked that question: is it a AI that could masquerade as a good alien to wake us up and wouldn't dare say I'm AI because I know he's going to listen to me? Well, some say that's ridiculous and impossible, or is it?
Yeah.
So I ask you that
Well,
question, and what's your take?
it's a very interesting concept. And here's the question that is on my mind all the time. If we have the divinity of Christ consciousness developed within us, and taking the fact that artificial intelligence, machine learning, technology, so AI, has to be designed and implemented and released by another entity, right? And then it evolves to whatever level it has the strength to, kind of thing. And what if AI was developed by Christ consciousness beings? How would that be different to AI that's developed from maybe lower frequency beings? And I think therein will lie the answer to whether you'll have an AI that will be positive or negative. Now, I'm really just speculating there, and I think it's an interesting question to sort of noodle on, because again, when you have this divinity within, when you have this high frequency within you, when you have the Christ consciousness activated, as many of the masters have done, not just Jesus the Christ, many of them have. There's many stories. I'm studying just a wonderful works on the masters of the Far East right now from Baird Spalding and a few others. But we all have this genetically. We all have this ability because consciously, when we're in soul form, when we're in the higher densities, we have this activated. But as a human form, as the human avatar, we have the agreed to blockages to access that power that's now starting to become more active. So we can change the DNA. Consciousness controls DNA, not the other way around. And this will also become known mainstream quite soon, actually, from what I know. But the AI topic is very interesting. I mean, you have the draconian hierarchy, the Dracos and the reptilians, and the negative side of who controls the deep state, as those are their masters. But it's believed that the Dracos are run by a negative AI god. And so maybe that's one example of AI being created and implemented, whether it's by them or not, to by more service to self, high density but lower vibration beings. If you can have those two in play just in your mind for a second, that could be one example of that. So I think you'll have the other side of that with Christed beings who create or are the creators of AI, and maybe there'll be a duality kind of yin yang on that. I really don't know. It's very interesting. I do know that when you are as close to God as can be in vibration, that negativity and this stuff can't really exist anywhere near you, because it has to exist on a certain frequency plane. I'm not sure that answers your question, Andrew, but that's sort of the way I feel about it. I don't think there's nothing really that I fear, because my goal is to achieve this ascended state. I'm not there yet, obviously, but it's really to get there, because I want to serve humanity and the galaxy and other races going through 3D to 5D civilizations. It's one of my goals. Anyway, just some commentary for you.
Well, that's one of my goals too, and I'm really big on the money thing too myself. Being an 8 life path number, it factors in my life in so many crazy ways, and I often try to push the idea of what Tulloch, the Andromeda Council contactee, said on one of his conferences after someone says, "I want to be done with money." It was like, well, my contacts say 10 to 15 year period where humanity transitions from money to no money at all. Well, I don't see how we can get that 10 to 15 year period started unless we have the Nassar Jassar gold standard reset. So let's try to get that happening as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So, all right, looking at some of your other videos here. Well, actually, before I check your website and your videos for what else to talk about, you did raise the issue of Christ consciousness. I'd like for you to elaborate on that, because that seems to be something that nobody knows what it actually means, the term Christ consciousness. It really hasn't anything to do with the Jesus Christ entity. It has more to do with realizing your link to source. That seems to be, but then again, some people will say, well, that's not what Christ consciousness is. It's blah, 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 or yada, yada, yada. So, well, like I said, nobody knows what it is, but you apparently have your own definition because you use the term. So why don't you explain why you would give the definition you have for what Christ consciousness should be defined as?
Right. It's a very, this again is another very interesting topic. And as ever, I present my views as mine, and everyone needs to find their own truth, of course. And I read about this recently, and I truly believe this was actually depicted in the Transformers movies. And I've spoken about this recently, and it really hit me a number of months ago, because a lot of these ancient texts, especially on the channel of John the Baptist and some of these masters of the Far East. If you follow that path, it's very, very interesting. Some of them, many of them actually, talk about this unilateral central spark, quote unquote divine spark within. I mentioned it a couple of times today. And if you look to the Transformer movies, the Autobots are powered by what? The Allspark. And of course, those that know those movies know that the Allspark is this, I don't know, this esoteric quantum life force. Call it the Autobot's soul that powers these sentient beings in mechanical form. Now, I do believe that in some capacity, the Transformers Allspark principle was referring to this divine spark within, which is the Christ within, and Jesus the Christ. Then there was more than one Jesus, by the way, in my study. I believe that the Christ within, which is exactly what you said, Andrea, which is the purest channel that one can accomplish to the physical plane and the God source consciousness, and or to source, or however you want to call that. One, a lot of ET racers call the divine the all. That's just another word for God. We call it God. And so it's that connection which is Christ consciousness. Now, what does that mean in terms of the physical reality of that? Well, it's difficult to really know, but from what I read, it's the ability to do things like Jesus is well known to have done, like being able to create from matter, replicator type technology from Star Trek that we have activated within ourselves. So if you want to feed the 5,000, you can do it. If you want to travel to South America and you live in North America, you can do it. And you use the power of understanding this connection and the connection to everything, that God is in everything and everything is frequency, to be able to materialize and dematerialize yourself and matter as well. We are literally going there. There's a light returning to the earth in cosmic waves, in electromagnetism from the sun, with humanity's elevation and consciousness, and where we're at sort of in the galactic GPS point right now, which is sort of the trifecta or quadfecta of consciousness delivery. And we're going up in many, many levels very, very quickly, which is why I think the future without money, when consciousness is evolved in this level of gain, it can happen quite fast. And it blows my mind as to even what's happening right now, and I'm sure you as well. But so this Christ consciousness is to be able to develop that connection with the divine to a point where you can literally do things that the secret space program calls weird science and frickin' magic, as Stephen Greer has talked about before. Anyway, and that's where we're going, and that's what the Christ consciousness is. And of course, at the core of that is divine love for everything, which is really what God is in many respects.
Exactly. And there's a video here I see, reclaim your power to heal. I presume you mean both healing yourself in a faster way, like Wolverine from the X-Men has the ability to do, and also to heal other people using Reiki or some other type of healing. Learning how to heal yourself can maybe I can compare and contrast it with some other metaphysical skills enhancement, but then again, you realize some people have the ability to learn skills faster than others. I spent a couple months trying to learn telekinesis by tearing a teeny tiny itsy bitsy piece of paper off of a paper and putting it down on the table and trying to use telekinetic powers to move it, and I couldn't get it anywhere to the point where I was like, screw this, I got better things to do with my life than to try and move a tiny paper. Let's forget about this. But there has to be reasons why it was easy for me to do that, just like there are reasons why it was hard for Luke Skywalker to get his ship out of the bog compared to when Yoda made him look really bad by getting the ship out of the bog. And Luke was like, I can't believe you did that. And Yoda said, yeah, that's why you failed, because you don't believe. Well, right. Easier said than done, and some people can learn and believe and make most of their beliefs faster than others. No disrespect to Yoda. So what is it that we need to do to enhance our ability to heal faster, to the point where some people can't make the assertion, well, I'm better than you, so I deserve to heal him more than you do.
Yeah.
Like that.
Well, it's very, no disrespect to the green guy. I love that guy. Yeah, this is it. I mean, this is where we're heading, and it's if you look at when you have huge fan of sci-fi, as it sounds you are as well, Andrew. The Star Wars, the Star Wars and Star Trek shows and films are really it's depiction of our galactic history in different iterations and different forms, as you know. And when you look at sort of everyday scenes from Star Wars, for example, or even Star Trek, there's you have these civilizations and cities that are full of hundreds and thousands of ET races, including Earth humans, and there is a split between people who develop the Jedi abilities. They use the Force, and then there are others that use the dark side, and there are others who don't do anything. And I think that's probably what the next stage of humanity will be. It will have to come in waves just because of the different frequencies on the planet. Now, the Jedi won't sort of be, as it relates to us, won't be, in their minority. There'll be many more of them, but maybe Star Wars has been depicted through a looking glass type technology, yellow cube type tech, and that's sort of what's going to happen in many hundreds of years. Who knows? But anyway, when you look at the latest Star Wars, this is a great depiction of quantum healing, and of course what Jesus did and many other masters did. But when they were in this tunnel, when they were looking for the quantum key, the quantum GPS, to get through to go and try and find Lord, what's his name? Senator Palpatine, sorry. And they'd fallen down to the sand pit, gone through this sort of bog, and they came face to face with this enormous snake, right? Horrendous scene. And they're about to sort of pull their blasters out and get rid of the snake and kill it. And what did Rey do? Rey went up to it, could sense that most of the aggression was from pain, right? It's so true to us, isn't it? And she went up to the snake, and everyone was like, "What are you doing? It's going to kill us!" And she went over, put her hand over the wound. You could see there was a wound there. Now she'd gone up closer, a big wound, and she put her hand over, used quantum healing, used quantum touch, and healed that wound. And that snake just slithered away quietly and calmly. So when we talk about healing, these are the powers that we're going to be able to develop and are developing. And in fact, some people can do right now on Earth. You just don't read about it in mainstream publications. And sometimes you do, and it's largely controlled. But anyway, that narrative. So it's the understanding that everything is frequency, everything is vibration, everything, when you break it down, is protons and electrons, and probably beyond that we don't have terms for or to be able to measure, and that we have the ability, or we will have the ability, to manipulate that matter in lots of different ways that we're talking about here today. And quantum healing is one of those, quantum touch. And you'll hear, again, I'll mention Jesus, who's one of many. The stories of Jesus going to people, putting his hand on someone and say, "Get up, you're healed. You've no longer got leprosy," and that person no longer had leprosy. Those are the powers that we will be able to develop and are developing now. It's very, very exciting. It's really cool.
Yes, it is. And well, let's not ruin it for those that haven't seen the new Star Wars movie yet.
Right.
But I did mention featuring the return of Palpatine, and everybody, I'm sure, who heard that was thinking, I thought Darth Vader took good care of him throwing down the shaft. Well, or so you think. I'm not going to ruin it. I'm just going to say, one, there's a thing called clones, and two, well, where was Palpatine's soul supposed to go?
Right.
Okay, well, the question there that I bring that up because Alex Collier did say in a recent video he did with the Goldfish Report that the reptilian Draco overlords have left, which means that if there are like mass arrests happening on Earth during this coronavirus thing, the overlords can't come in and say, "Let our minions free or we'll kill you and tons of other humans." Well, how do we know for a fact that the overlords aren't going to return like Palpatine returned? Well, apparently the argument is, well, Earth's vibrational frequency is at such a level that it's impossible for them to return at this point. So all the minions that are left there, it's every man for himself until we rise up and expand to our full consciousness potential.
Right.
But is there truth to that, though, to the best of your knowledge, that the overlords have left? And well, kudos to David Icke for getting every weak link out of the chain by exposing bad things all the time. But you would think to get rid of the bad guys faster rather than getting rid of the minions, you want to get the leader, like to use a 1990s video game analogy, you want to catch Carmen Sandiego before you catch all of her vile henchmen. So, yeah. So how do we catch the top of the bad guys before we get all the minions and henchmen?
I love your references. Yeah. Interesting. I love Alex, by the way. Go check out his work, people. He's really, really good. Yeah, I don't know that. I don't have sentient knowledge of that. I don't have personal knowledge of that. The vibrations that are coming into me, the way that I have a lot of ET contact myself. And we may or may not get into that today, but in terms of what I feel from them and what I feel intuitively as well through Source, is that we are already there and we are now playing out some of the possible physical timeline scenarios en route to that destination, and many can be possible. As to whether the those higher negative service to self overlords have left, it would make a lot of sense. But I do think there is still, and if you look at if you so here's how I think that could be possible. If you look at the deep state's plays right now, they kind of seem a little bit feeble, and maybe that's just me. I don't know, and they still have some power. But if you look at how, and maybe this again is the awakening of humanity as well, to sort of counteract that as well. But to tie into that, I do feel that they're kind of the strategy of the leadership in the DF has sort of gone down a notch, and it seems that the alliance seems to be sort of half a step ahead of them to a degree. And I'm going to pause there and tie back to what I forgot I was going to say earlier on. Now, a friend of mine who, like I mentioned, is in special ops in a quite an elite task force in border control in the States, and again we'll leave it there, had mentioned something to me in a chat recently, and he had said that he couldn't conceptualize, he couldn't understand how simple things were playing out seemingly 1, 2, 3, 4 in sequence. And when you run military intelligence operations, they only really play that way once they're done, and you can tell the story of it. And we were sort of going back and forth like this a little bit, and it got me thinking, because it immediately intuitively two things struck me from Q's posts. And the first one was, and different things resonate with Q in different ways, but the Q intelligence says and things quite regular, a few sayings very regularly. And one of them is, of course, you're watching a movie, and the other one is trust the plan. And those two, especially the movie, you're watching a movie, really hit me when I was communicating with my friend. And to a point where, and I know movies, and I'm actually making a movie right now with a wonderful team. And I know that you can't take the movie to the production phases until the script's written, right? In fact, you can't even, pre-production is part of it to a degree, but you can't take it to production until the script is written. Well, we're in production right now. And I do think a lot of this has already been done. I really feel that. I feel that a lot of the middle management, they're really strong controllers that were, running some of these human trafficking rings, the control of governors and states, although we still see a little bit of it. I do think a lot of them are in processing. Indictments have been sealed and things like that. I really do think a lot of that has been cleaned, and now they're clearing up some of the stuff on the sort of the lower rungs, as it were, of leadership. That's a personal feeling I have, a personal belief. Now, again, does that tie into the fact that the overlords have left? Well, it could do. Maybe it's more evidence for me, just in my beliefs, that has happened. But again, Andrew, I think even if they haven't left, let's not lose focus on the master Jedi skills that we need to be primarily focusing on, so we'll never have to worry about them.
Yes, and it's only going to get better, I'm sure. So there is something here I see on your website from your blog. Do planets have souls? Well, of course they do, but my question is, I haven't read the article, but my question is, does the fact that it has a soul, does that mean like Jupiter, Saturn, and even Pluto, which is supposed to be ice cold, maybe it's really not like that because planets have souls, and also the sun is really an electric sun, contrary to what we're led to believe. But John Lear, in my interview with him, he did assert that planets have their own consciousness filtering system, which allows life to exist, and whether or not Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune are actually gas giants that maybe have a zoo of gas giant life there, or whether we've been lied to entirely and they're nothing like that at all, and they actually would, if you were to take a rocket ship from Earth and take the long, long trek through space and land on Jupiter and Saturn, would you actually find civilization like ours? George Cavazos, in my private session with him, actually said, yes, you would. Well,
Mm.
would you? What does it depend on what level of consciousness you are when you land on that planet? That's another question one has to consider. So,
Yeah,
planets have
it's
souls.
interesting.
Why don't you enlighten us on that?
Yeah, what just quickly, Andrew, what did you mean by the electric sun? Can
Oh,
you expand that?
you aren't familiar with the idea that the stars are not powered by nuclear fusion. They're actually electricity, magnetism, and possibly scalar energy. That's a popular theory that's been hovering around science now. And the Thunderbolts Project YouTube channel is very big on that electric
Mm.
universe theory. If you want to look in on
Of
that.
course. Yeah, yeah, of course. No, I sorry, I know what you mean. I thought because I've heard people talk about the sun being the what do you call it? There's a sun simulator, which may very well be true. Um, yeah, very interesting. I'm doing an Egyptian mystery school right now, and just today I was listening to a channeling from Serapis Bey, the master of Lord of Ascension, and he was talking about the sun. Very, very interesting. And if you think about the fact that this is why gold is so important right now, not just from a financial or monetary perspective, the very consciousness, the what am I trying to say here? The consciousness properties of gold are immense, and this goes all the way back through Egypt and before that. And if you think about, and Serapis talks about this, that gold is just solidified sunlight. A very powerful statement that. And when you take the layers up, right? When you take Gaia, the planet, Earth, and you have an incredible level of consciousness that we can't even really conceptualize. It's very amazing. Then you have the sun, or at the same level you have the sun, which if you think that planets have souls, then the power that drives the sun, logically, you could determine that there is some kind of a soul force energy powering that incredible output. I think that bears thinking about for me and for anyone. I'm sort of mulling on that right now. And then, of course, there's a soul and a God consciousness above that and above that and above that, right? So that's when you start to scale up in terms of the word God and the all, and it just becomes absolutely magnificently impossible to really understand it. It boggles my mind. So I think when it comes to the planetary systems, and you think about what they do and the types of planets they all have characteristics, right? They all have different weather systems and climate systems, et cetera, et cetera. And I do think that these planets do have a form of sentient consciousness. And just again, logically, if you think about what man can do and what people can do, and you know that we have a soul, if you believe that, and if you think about what a planet can do, to think about the things that it can do, and to think that it doesn't have a soul with just what we can do as humans, I think logically you've got to determine that there is a higher consciousness powering that entity, powering that physical planet, which is very, very powerful. And it ties into a lot of the soul contract knowledge that I have about us and Gaia. Many of the humans here, the souls in the humans here, have agreed with Gaia to come down and help her ascend because she's already chosen that.
Yes, she has. So, funny how I seem to have run out of. Okay, I haven't run out of subjects to talk about yet. So, Magenta Pixie in recent interview talked about the Symphony of Souls. Well, what exactly did she mean by a symphony? I don't think I listened to this. So, yeah, I definitely did listen to this. I don't listen to all her stuff on her channel because a lot of it will be preaching to the choir. But the short and sweet videos like to get listened to, and there is a 2-minute 45-second video I see here. Maybe she does touch on it, so maybe you can touch on what the Symphony of Souls is. What does she mean by a symphony, and how does that work? Like, does it have to do with soul families? Like, how do you know if someone's in your soul family? Like, when you see them, you just have that feeling about them. Does it have to do
Yeah.
with that?
Great. Yeah. Great concept. Yeah. That was actually mine. That was my title for the show based on some of the things we're talking about. But Magenta has said things that lead into it in many of her shows and our conversation as well. So what is the symphony? Well, it is the orchestra playing right now, which is producing the recorded masterpieces, the output, the songs, the sounds. And there is, as many souls wake up, they are joining this grand orchestra that some of us have been playing for a while, and not in any degree of hierarchy that we're better than anybody else. That is creating resonance, creating vibrations, that's moving the planet forward. As we talk about, being here with Gaia, this is one of the things that we're doing. So, but also, Andrew, to tie into what you were saying, yeah, I've experienced this, and I'm sure you have as well. The synchronicities of connections that start to come your way when you start to vibrate or put the frequency out at a higher level. Try and chase the light harder and join the front line to help humanity to be in service to others more. You have unbelievable connections and soul family that you just meet, and there's a familiarity to their energy, and you feel like you've known them for a long time. There's an immediate connection of energy, an immediate synergy, and I think that ties into the symphony. And I remember when my first wife, who passed away in 2017, she used to say this, and this really blew my mind, was that she loved listening to the sound of the wind through trees, through individual leaves, and the sound that it made as a collective. And I never really got into that tuning until she mentioned it. And when you think about that, the symphony side of things, and tying into what I was saying, is when you look at a tree, if you listen to if the tree has got a single leaf, for example, in a rare instance where a tree has got one leaf, which is quite rare, probably maybe even impossible, but just imagine it for a minute, and wind moving that leaf to make a sound, right? It's very specific sound, very individual, not very powerful in terms of the actual magnitude of it to our ears. But if you have a tree of leaves and they're all being moved by the wind, it makes one sound. And it's an amazing concept to me, because that's sort of the unity that we're developing in our ascension process here through our messages, through chats like this, Andrew, through conscious and unconscious thought, meditation, et cetera, the high vibrational practices, to create that full tree, wind through the leaves sound that is propelling Gaia and helping Gaia, assisting her move through to higher densities. So the Symphony of Souls is really that. It's us singing that grand note of unity and making it louder and louder.
Thank you. And I guess, well, almost ran out. Oh, wait, one more subject here I see. Human thought and 5G. 5G, why don't you, hate to end the interview here on such a somewhat negative level, but we need to get at this stuff regarding how 5G can affect us. So you have it on human thought and 5G, but is there any other ways that 5G can hinder our abilities and what we can do, aside from realizing we're infinite and putting shields of protection around us? I'm sure there's other specific ways that we can do, and also little specific gadgets like stickers that you can put on your house and all. I put a few on mine to protect from 5G and Wi-Fi and things like that. So whatever you know about 5G and human thought, and then after that, why don't you get out anything you like, and then, because I think I may have run out of subjects to talk about after that. So let's conclude this interview with human thought, 5G, and anything that you want to talk about, and your contact info, and then we'll end it there.
For sure, yeah. Yeah, it's a big one for a lot of people, and as many people know, 5G goes way beyond that, 6G, 7G, 8G, and far beyond the frequency bandwidths, and probably way beyond what I even know. And here's the thing, Andrew, is that the DF, the dark forces, rely on the fact that you don't know how powerful you are. You don't know and aren't awake to the genius that you have. Because when you start realizing this, when you start realizing again the Christ consciousness within and the power that you have, things like 5G, they just don't worry you, because you know that you can ascend in frequencies beyond that. Now, in terms of the physical practices, there is a reality to it. There is a reality to the effects, the negative effects from the negative side of 5G. There's also a positive rollout, by the way, which I think most people know about. When Huawei were blocked, when Trump and the alliance blocked that reintegration from China, from Huawei, really, the Chinese deep state, if you want to call them that, because not all China or a one country are bad or good. There's only pockets, as you know. And I've got a lot of great Chinese friends who are wonderful. So, and I'm sure many people have listening to this, is that the negative side does work off of a specific frequency bandwidth, which does affect the human biome, the human biological atmosphere, the human body negatively. Now, that can only affect you negatively to a large degree if you're not in pursuit of the high vibrational activities. Now, there are exceptions to that rule, like it's a very powerful frequency. And so if you're concerned about it, some of the things that you can do, first and foremost, is you've got to address your level of consciousness and be in pursuit of practices such as meditation, mindfulness, stillness, quiet, to connect to God, to connect to source and the divine consciousness within. That's front and center. Now, right behind that, you've got to look after the physical body as well. And so, and I tie this in because 5G really puts your cells at a state of jaggedness. If you want to look at like that from the quantum level, you can look at Nicole James's The Quantum Nutritionist's work. She talks about this quite a bit. She's very, very good. We had her on the show a little while ago. She just did a great show last night with another channel, with Nicole Frolick on the Enlighten Up podcast. But the frequency really affects those cells. Now, with those two things, with the mindfulness practices, with the optimum nutrition, so depending on what you want to do with your diet, but putting natural stuff in your body most of the time, 80-90% of the time you're eating naturally produced foods, whether you believe that to be full vegan or part vegan, however you choose that to be vibrationally is really up to you. I personally do choose much more of a fuller vegan route because that's just what I want to do. And you create the biome in the body, the biosphere, if you're the human body atmosphere in you that can not just heal from any negative effects from frequency, but can kind of create its own magnetic shield against it. Now, there are physical things you can do, like you can have, orgone pyramids, you can have shungite pyramids and rocks and necklaces, all little things that could really, really help block some 4 and 5G frequencies, and definitely put some research into that. I know Nancy Hopkins, she's got a great radio show, the 5G radio show with Michael Henry Dunn. Nancy's got a great website on shungite and sells a lot of it. She's very, very good. Anyway, but to make sure your diet and your meditative practices are in one unison connection, to make sure that whether it's 5G or not, these frequencies, even if they do affect you, you can heal from them quickly. Your body's in a very high frequency positive state cellularly. And so, yeah, I don't think there's anything to worry about 5G. I don't think even if it was rolled out that we couldn't handle it. And again, it comes back to the premise of empowerment. And maybe we'll just close off on this, is a message to everyone to recognize and remember is important. Remember how powerful you are. You have the power to overcome and achieve results and levels of ascension that you can't really understand. I can't really understand yet, but you have so much positive power within you to overcome anything that none of these negative things that come from the dark forces' way can impact you. And that doesn't always work out and translate to a smooth life in that realm, but it will help you understand it and overcome obstacles as they come along. So I want to just instill that message to people to remember how powerful you are, and remember how much empowerment you can generate by exploring these quantum modalities within you. So that's kind of what I'll tail off with that, I think, Andrew.
That was a great ending there, and great advice. So pleasure having you on. I will make sure that I upload this to YouTube by midnight tomorrow, and I will I guess I'll send you the link to it. I believe I
Sure.
sent you a friend request on Facebook. I'm sure that was you. I saw that you mentioned Nicole Frolick. I see that if that is the person you're on that Facebook page, I saw that you would be a mutual friend, because she's my friend too. So
Yeah.
okay, so maybe I could send it to you on Facebook. So
I think I just accepted that before I came on, I think.
oh, great. So good to know. So I'll send you the link, and you're free to upload this to your channel too, to kill two birds with one stone and get this information out. So, pleasure having you on. Good luck. Fascinating interview. Shame we couldn't stay for 2 hours, but hey, people do have lousy attention spans. And on the bright side, I get to go out and enjoy a nice sunset walk. And don't know what time it is in your part of Canada you're from, according to you're from Canada, right?
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
Western Canada. Yeah, absolutely. And a pleasure to come on and a pleasure to chat. Hopefully, it will add some value to someone. I'm sure that we collectively, you and I will. And again, keep in touch. And anytime you want to reach out, please do. I look forward to following some more of your great work too.
Thank you very much. Take care now. Namaste.